Ahoy! Today we're talking about the 8.5 patch as well as the 8.4 bonus balance. Primarily looking at the balance changes and a little bit at some of these skins as well that I haven't looked at yet. These skins you've already seen from the bonus balance, so let's get right into the balance changes here. This patch has a crazy amount of balance changes overall. It's almost like a mid-season patch, so some really interesting stuff here. The first one is for Spear of Desolation. Decrease the amount of cooldown subtracted from an enemy from an ultimate ability from 8 seconds to 6 seconds when this item's passive triggers. I think that's fair enough. I think Spear of Desolation was still very potent in that regard and will still remain a strong item in many ways. And I think this is specifically targeting some of the shorter ultimates where it's a bit abusable. And Seele, decrease physical power from 60 to 50 and increase the cost from 2,150 to 2,250. Also very much fair. I mean, like I said, this item is in every jungle build at the moment. It's not really worth not building, basically, in almost any situation. It deserved a nerf, and it got a nerf. And I think the nerf is reasonable. It's still going to be a good item, but it's not going to be like super core because the power is a little bit lower and the price is a little bit higher. It was a massive amount of power for that low price. Shifter's Shield, also... same story, basically. Like I said in the video, like the standard items are Seele, Shifter's Shield, and Bumba's Hammer, which we get to next. Decreased physical power from 35 to 30, and decreased physical power on passive from 35 to 30. I think this is maybe going to be enough to push Shifters out of the meta, weirdly enough. I think Shifters is this item that's like always right on the edge of either being like picked up all the time or not picked up. But the problem with Shifters is it always competes with Void Shield as well. And unless you need unless you're picking up Shifters' first item before you even picking up anything, like a first item after boots, you might not want to pick it up as much anymore because you might want to opt into other things that are more preferable. And we're also seeing some other item changes that will generally encourage other build styles. So I would be surprised if it actually remains all too popular after this. But we'll see, but... yeah, I think it's just because the power spike was very heavy and now that's taken down a notch. So that goes for both items. So I think this is fine. I think these changes are good. We'll see. We'll see if Shifters stays in the meta or not. And then we have the Bumba's Hammer nerf, and that's the most drastic one here. Decrease cooldown from 20% to 10%. That part I think is very reasonable. I think the cooldown on this item was too high. For being a late game item. It's just stupid that you have to hold off building cooldown reduction just so that you can build Bumba's Hammer in late game. And now you can itemize much better. I would say you can, for example, build Jolton's Wrath and a Hydra's Lament and Bumba's Hammer, or you can build whatever, Transcendence, Erendite, something else with CDR, and you can still build Bumba's Hammer without feeling like you're wasting stats on CDR. On the other hand, also removed all penetration percentage, or percentage penetration rather. That one I find strange. I do not understand why Hi-Rez is so hesitant to just target the passive itself. I think the passive, they say the passive is what makes this item fun and interesting, but I think the passive is good enough on a character like Raven that has just damaging abilities that he uses and then he can use that to reset. Or like Camazots. I don't see why we have to have this abusable mechanic where for gods that have other cooldown resets or extremely short cooldowns. I don't see why we have to have Tsukuyomi, who's broken because of this item primarily. Well, he's strong anyways, but like this item makes him way more broken. Having his constant free resets. I don't see why we have to have Habois getting multiple resets on his one. I don't see why we have to have Loki having almost perma-stealth. I don't see why this cannot be adjusted in a way where it can proc once per ability and then get an internal cooldown to not proc again on the same ability of, say, 8 seconds. So that if you have a cooldown that you can basically instantly reset, then it gets reset once and not 3-4 times in a row. Because I think that is the fundamental issue with Bumba's Hammer. And I would have much rather seen that tackled, so the outlier cases for this item, the real problem cases, would have been adjusted. And then maybe take away some of the healing or something on it as well. Then taking away the penetration, which I think was a stat that justifies picking this up more in a damaging build. So I think this is a very questionable change. I think Bumba's Hammer definitely needed nerfs. I don't think the way they're going about it is the right approach, because it will always lead to some characters being really, really broken with this item, no matter what, because, you know, they can just build tanky and get constant resets and not care. And other characters will get less and less value out of it, even though they should be good users for it. Like a damage-focused character will already get a fair bit less value out of this because now it doesn't have pen anymore and has less CDR. And I don't understand why that's the approach, because the item already doesn't come with damage in itself. I think, I don't know if it's really hard to code internally or whatever the problem with it is, but I think it's very frustrating to see what they're doing with an item that deserved nerfs from the start, but like seemingly always going against the way, and then specifically nerfing guards because they can't seem to figure out the right way with the set specifically. So I find that very awkward. Gilgamesh is getting nerfs as well. He's performing very well. He was very strong. And these nerfs here are not that drastic, but he's getting more nerfs in the second update. So first nerf here is to Sunshot Scimitar, decrease the basic attack damage from 3.5% of your health to 3% of your maximum health per hit. This doesn't affect you much if you're going for a damage focused build or something anyways, but this does affect his damage potential when going like super tanky, where he can still deal pretty good damage with his basics. Heroes Advance decreased physical power scaling from 65% to 50% and increased cooldown from 15 to 16 seconds. The cooldown change here I don't think is that significant because typically you're only using this once per fight anyways. The scaling decrease is pretty significant because he has a very large radius with his ability, a very large AoE. So it's very easy to apply this to a lot of enemies. So taking that scaling down a little bit, I think is very much fair. Tiamat also well-performing character, also gets a secondary nerf in the second patch. Death Begets Life here has the healing that you get from a large heal decreased from 40 plus 8 per level to 30 plus 6 per level, meaning it was up to 200 beforehand and is now up to 150. Keep in mind, this is the heal that only procs while you're in the mage stance, in the upright stance. Tsukuyomi is getting a nerf as well. Again, they could just nerf Bumbas differently, but hey. Piercing Moonlight decreased the damage mitigation he gets while firing from 30 to 20%. I think that's reasonable. I don't see why the ability even needs mitigation in the first place, to be honest. Like, I can see that you're getting punished while using it if it doesn't have mitigation, but I don't think that would be bad. You already see C-immune. But yeah, at least it's reduced a little bit. And decreased the physical power scaling on the dash damage from 50 per hit to 45% per hit. So that's a total of 20% scaling of the ultimate. It's something. It's not drastically going to change him, I think, but it's a nerf. I think the mitigation part might actually be more important because you have a higher chance of bursting him down before he goes through with the ultimate if he uses it to like for safety or for fighting, for boxing. Then we have Guan Yu, who gets a nerf to his ultimate, decreasing the base damage of cavalry charge from 85 to 205 to 75 to 175 per hit. This is a pretty significant nerf, I think, because the hits scale up with like if you hit multiple times, if I remember correctly. And either way, I mean, it's 30 base damage of each hit at the top rank here. So this is a pretty heavy nerf to his damage output. What I'm wondering is if that is really Guan Yu's problem. I don't know if the ultimate damage is something that people consider to be a major issue of this character. Most of the time when I see people using the ult, they're using it to like stun someone and cancel it pretty quickly and not go through most of it anyways. And then, yeah, it's 30 damage, but it's also just 30 damage. I thought they'd be looking at his base kit more, maybe tackling his 3 a little bit or something, but I guess they want to target the ultimate. Who knows what's going on there. We have Apollo. Glory. Finally. Apollo is finally getting the level of nerfs that he needed. Like, he's been getting nerfs, yeah? He's been getting nerfs, but they were so not targeting the core problems of this character. They might as well revert the other nerfs now, because I think these ones will have a much higher impact. And now they just decided to just completely hit him, ironically, as he is actually losing popularity in the pro scene. But he's gonna stay. He's still a very strong rank character, and he would have stayed a strong rank character, I think. So it's still fine to give him these nerfs and then maybe buff him again a little bit if he needs buffs after that. But he's been so strong for so long. So Audacity decreases stacks gain from damaging an enemy guard with an ability from 2 to 1. I think the passive actually is super underrated by some people, not by everyone, but like he has got such a strong passive, and taking away some of that already has such a big impact on his pressure and overall, like, and his gank potential, like if the passive is not stacked as often and everything. The moves, decreased movement speed buff and debuff from 15% to 25% to 10% to 20%. Also massive, because it really affects how well you can chase him. And he is already such a safe guard through his ultimate and through his dash and through his mess. And just taking away some of that movement speed is going to be huge also for his chase potential. And then Across the Sky, increased mana cost from 10 mana plus 40 per second to 10 mana plus 40 up to 80 mana per second. So it scales up with the rank. Now you can say, sure, that doesn't matter to me. I'm just not going to level the ability and it costs less, which you could do. But then obviously your ultimate will also deal significantly less damage when dropping down on an enemy. So it's a trade-off you have to make for yourself. I think most people will end up leveling it still, because overall the value of the damage output when landing on an enemy is probably too high to pass up on. I haven't actually looked into the base numbers and scaling, how much of a difference it makes, but I feel like it's something you'd still want. And it means that these like obnoxious late game situations where he just flies around forever and kind of just has vision of the enemy team and is a constant threat above you don't exist as much anymore. And I think that's a very good thing. That's a very good change. So I'm glad they did this. So yeah, huge nerfs to Apollo that will definitely hit him overall. How much we'll see of him afterwards, I can't say. He still has the buff to his 1, so I think that's still going to be very impactful. His 2 is still instant, but I think there are other hunters that might shine more now. But I'm very happy with these nerfs, because it's been more than half a year at this point, guys. It's been more than half a year. For those who say, oh, he just came into meta or something. No, it's been long enough with him being a top tier. And then we have Athena, speaking of top tiers. Reverted the duration increase from 1.2 seconds to 2 seconds, back to 1 second to 2 seconds. So early ranks taunt is shorter again. This, I think, is going to make a pretty significant difference, because a lot of people were looking primarily at the damage output that her 2 does now, which is obviously a huge difference, especially for poke and solo for jungle Athena. But I think the taunt duration especially was something that also affected support a lot and made a very big difference in early game. And I think that was too much. I think that it's reasonable to nerf that back. And the scaling of the 2 is decreased from 30% to 20%, so very low scaling ability, as well as the base damage going down from 50 to 170 to 40 to 160. Considering that she got all this extra damage that was no damage before, it's not like this is a massive nerf, right? It's 10 of each rank. She still gets 160 extra damage over what she previously had. So it's still a massive buff anyways. It's not a big deal that they're nerfing it down a little bit, but I do think that these nerfs are reasonable, because she was just doing a little bit too hot after these changes, and we'll see what she does now. And her, very, very interesting. Super popular right now here. Okay, in most played got in rank conquest already as well, in competitive especially, getting some nerfs here. Decrease the physical power scaling from Impale on Impale from 80% to 75%, so really just 5% scaling decrease, doesn't do that much. And then Desert Fury reduced from 70 to 170 to 65 to 165 per hit. These are very, very careful nerfs, I would say. I mean, obviously the ultimate adds up a little bit more because there's a lot of hits. I think it's 10 hits, there's 8 hits, I don't know. But it's still something where you definitely can see that they didn't want to like go full on out with these nerfs. And I could imagine, depending on his SPL performance in the future, that they might be looking to nerf him more. But I think this is a fair enough start, because it's not like the meta has suddenly changed around Anhur or anything. I think it's just that he has shown to be a very good guard with the new items and everything. And yeah, things just went in his favor so far. So we'll see how things develop in long term. Set is still doing very, very well. Still doing well in ranked, especially still being used in competitive, not necessarily doing as well there. It's more countering to him there and stuff as well. But he still deserves some nerfs. Skewer gets his damage decreased from 85 to 265 to 75 to 255. So 10 of all ranks. Which is, I think, a pretty significant hit because the early rank is hit here, which means that early clear is affected, early pressure is affected. And that's always something that you can feel both in jungle and while laning. But I would say especially while laning when you have to clear 6 minions at once. So yeah, I think that is a pretty heavy hit. And then Sandstorm decreased physical damage reduction from 15% to 10%. And I gotta be honest, I actually completely forgot that ability does that in the first place. Like, it's such a side effect, I feel, that like you're not really going to use the ability for that effect primarily. You're using the ability to deal more damage, you're using it to stack your ultimate, and using it to apply item effects, and using it to teleport. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll really notice this change. Like, I guess some people on a very high level maybe, but I think if they changed this without putting in the patch notes, no one would have noticed. So I think the nerf here is primarily on the 1, and it is a fairly heavy nerf, even though it doesn't look like that much because it affects the early ranks here as well. And then the last one is Sobek, super highly valued overall at the moment, and he gets a relatively tiny nerf with the charge play, the pluck, getting a cooldown increase from 13 to 14 seconds. That doesn't sound like much, but at the same time, keep in mind that this is really the ability that sets him apart. Like, his 3 in late game is anti-heal. His 2 in late game is a brief disrupt of certain abilities. His 1 is what displaces an enemy and can completely ruin their day. So increasing the cooldown on this a little bit, so if you whiff, you get punished a lot, or if you get beatsed, can make a very big difference in my opinion. I think it's still a big change, and we might still see more changes to him in the future because I think he's still going to do well afterwards, regardless. Then we are moving over to the Monstercat update, the 8.5 update. So these skins I've already shown you guys. This is all in the Monstercat Battle Pass here. The Slushy Hades, Sullivan King, Gilgamesh, Kovan Changa, as well as Crab Brave Capri. And then there is the Azula Pele skin. I'm going to try... No, I actually can't. There's something very unfortunate about this skin, which I learned about today. And that is that the original voice actress was contacted today. Or like somebody on Twitter basically asked if she is voicing it. And she responded with, "Oh, I'd love to," because she didn't realize that the skin was already out. Turns out the original voice actress for the skin was never contacted by Hi-Rez in the first place. Not by Nickelodeon either. Like, no one later even know that this is a thing, basically. And yeah, her assumption or her guess was that it has something to do with like voice actors unions and then maybe just taking non-unionized people or whatever. I think either way, it's a very questionable choice by Hi-Rez. A very sad decision that they would go with someone different when the original voice actress is available. Obviously, this could be a cost thing, but then they have used very expensive, or I'm assuming very expensive voice actors in the past, considering they've used, like, I think Dragon Ball voice actors and stuff. So I don't understand this decision. And I don't, yeah, it does feel a little bit like maybe Hi-Rez wanted to work with someone that was recommended. Maybe they wanted to cheap out on this. I don't know. But I think it's not right. I think when the original voice actress is still doing voice acting and would be happy to do this, like, the least you can do is ask. Like, even if for some reason then they end up deciding that that's not the person they want to go with, I think it's really bad. I think this is like, I'm very happy with this patch overall, but I think this decision is really, really bad. The skin itself looks really cool. It uses a lot of blue, fiery, lightning effects, the type of stuff. So really cool custom animations as well. Direct purchase this time. No complaints there, but that, yeah, sours it a little bit for me, to be honest. And I kind of wish that Harris like still does something in that regard and changes. I don't know how they could remedy it at this point if they give an alternative skin where the original voice actress has her voice on it or something. But yeah, I just find it very weird. Then we have the other skins. We have an Apache skin here. I wanted to show that in the bigger screen quickly. We have an Odin skin, little hammerhead shark. Then we have an Oleron skin, and we have a Soul skin. And we also have an Anher skin, which they apparently forgot to show on the patch notes, which looks pretty cool. And we have the Athena Remodel. It looks really cool. The in-game design is also really cool. I know there's a screenshot of it going around where it doesn't look that good at the moment, but if you actually look at the video, it must have just been an awkwardly timed screenshot. Basically, her in-game model looks really cool as well. So that is very, very nice. So we've seen all of those here. These skins like that I showed were all Talons of Tyranny, except Anher, who is in the anti-hero chest. And then Athena's obviously the skin upgrade. You can also see the recolor here and the Mastery skin update. Looks very cool. Like I assumed, by the way, it keeps a lot of elements of the original Athena skin. You can see that especially in the default skin. And then kind of just polishes them and upgrades them, puts some more flair onto them, some little... Is ornament's the right word here? I don't know, but yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of overhaul in there, but there's also some elements that are just upgraded. For example, she still has her high heels, ironically. Even though she has that much more heroic look, I would say, she still kept the high heels. And... yeah, that's a funny one, but they are toned down a bit at least. And then we have the schedule here and the battle pass. By the way, I think the Sullivan King Gilgamesh is the free skin, and the Crab-Rave Capri skin, funny enough, is the recolor skin. So normally, right, they have one recolor skin in the pack, but they said, well, Capri is close enough to the chef skin, so it's kind of like a recolor, and that's why you can get that as instead of the recolor essentially. So I think it's not the last skin on the pass as well, which is cool, because honestly, the other two skins, yeah, if you get them, you get them. If you don't, I don't mind them much. Then we have quite a few quality of life changes that are actually relevant. First of all, starter items will now appear in the item search bar, so you can actually search them outside of the starter tab, which was super annoying. If a team does an early surrender, the winning team will now acquire a reduced amount of MMR. The losing team will still not lose any MMR. So you're not getting, you can't grind your way up by having DCs on the enemy team essentially, but you're still getting a reward. Also, there's some upgrades to more of the day, so there's some more guards included now, but here, ranked, this is important. Ranked resets are returning and will only apply to Diamond 1 and above players. So people who get, like, on this update, people who are Diamond or above, Diamond 1, no, not Diamond 1 or above, but rather Diamond 1. If you're Diamond 1, you'll stay in Diamond 1. But if you're above Diamond 1, you'll be reset to Diamond 1 and 2400 MMR, giving people a reason to play every patch, essentially, or every reset. Right now, the plan is to do this reset in 8.5, and then again, 2 updates from also at 8.7. But they said that if this feels too slow, then they will do this reset every patch. What I don't know is what that means for ranked frames at the end of the season, because normally those are counted at the end of the split based on your highest rank that you held in the split. So I don't know if people have to be like grandmasters or masters in the last part of the split in order to keep it, which would be kind of annoying in my opinion. Like if you get that at the start of the season, I don't see why you wouldn't get that frame. But yeah, either way, there's going to be these resets, and I think that is definitely a good change, because a lot of people were complaining about how you can basically stay up there super easy once you get there, and there's very little competition for those ranks. So that's good. Then we have a lot of bug fixes. I'm trying to see up there. There was something relevant here, but I have to find it first. Right here, the desync from character animation. So that is meant to be fixed for a lot of guards now, that your basic attacks will no longer desync. I'm hoping that especially Naja finally has that one fixed. And there were a few fixes for the base gates as well. Like base gates should now function like player-made walls when interacting with abilities that care about walls. Ricochets should bounce off them. Chernobyl can dash into them, and Janos cannot portal through them. So these are important changes for certain niche cases. Also, Achilles gets an update to his lore text, accurately describing Patroclus as his lover. So, this is to increase LGBT representation in SMITE. I didn't even realize that there are lore texts in game that describe this type of stuff, but I think it's cool that Harris is including that. And then there's a whole discussion bunch thing here about Gilgamesh as well, because it's not quite clear in his lore either, but they're stating that it's not quite clear, so they're not going to include it. Nemesis Retribution. This ability will now be cancelled if Nemesis is hit by a disarm, which is considered a hard CC. Fun fact, I thought that was already the case, but apparently it wasn't, so I was wrong for all these years, and now apparently it is the case. Another nerf to Nemesis, essentially. I like, it's not considered and like classified as a nerf here, but I think this is actually a pretty significant nerf for certain matchups where the enemy has disarms, like Bologna, for example, or AMC even. Then there's some minor fixes here for various guards. Again, this one is relevant. Kabrakan's Seismic Crush. Fixed an issue where this ability was using 33% lifesteal, although it is single target and should be 100% lifesteal. Kabrakan builds with Poly should include some lifesteal in quite a few situations. So, you know, it's going to be a little bit of sustain from it. It's going to be a little bit of survivability. It's checked, it's 12% lifesteal. Yeah, if you deal enough damage with that on a single target, that's not bad at all, in my opinion. And Gilgamesh gets a bunch of fixes. One of those being that his abilities could allow him to clip through certain player-made walls and phoenixes. Drop kicks could make a minion immune to damage, and the quest marker not always appearing. And there's a placeholder here, which I'm assuming is for a bug that is still in the game right now, that they don't want to disclose so people can't abuse it. And I'm fairly certain that is why it's there. And then Winds of Shamash fixed an issue where this dealt damage to structures. So a lot more fixes from overall that will be rolled out in 8.5. And yeah, Chernobog fixed an issue where he could not dash and hide into certain towers. He would like slide off them sometimes. Weird. Gilded Arrow can no longer mark Titans. And Leader's Cowl, this one is important. This is a pretty significant change to the item. Fixed an issue where the 5% power aura and the 3% power aura were both not affecting the item owner. This will now affect players who has Cowl as well as allied guards nearby. I was talking about this and I reported this a while ago, so I'm happy that's fixed now. The problem is still that the 3% aura, I think, as far as I'm aware, will only kick in when you have 2 allies nearby versus 1 enemy. But I'll have to check that again, I suppose, after these changes. Maybe it actually works as intended now, but either way, it's nice that at least the 5% power aura will definitely work, which makes this worth picking up more than before for certain solos, I would say, if you skip starters, but most of them are going blue star now anyways. And then we have a whole bunch of other changes. First of all, Wind Demon. This one is a little bit funny to me because the statement here is that the crit meter is back in a big way in the SPL, with this item being the main catalyst. And Rage is also a key factor. And I'm just here like, no. The key factor in all of that is Gilded Arrow. The Gilded Arrow and Ornate Arrow. It's nice though. So, but yeah, like Wind Demon's getting nerfed, decrease the movement speed from 20% to 10%, and the attack speed from 20% to 15% on the passive effect. That technically makes Toxic... no, not what I'm Not the item I wanted to talk about. Poison Star, a little bit more interesting. Because it technically allows you to chase enemies a little better at this point, I think. But Wind Demon still provides a decent amount of extra attack speed and still provides the pen. So we'll see what happens in that regard. It is interesting that they're changing this over this reverting Ornate Arrow to some degree or something, because I think Ornate Arrow is the much bigger deal here. But we'll find out what happens in that regard in the future. I could see some other changes happening there, and then maybe Wind Demon will be buffed a little bit again because they realized that actually Wind Demon wasn't the big problem. Excuse me. And then this one is very big. Upgraded Magic Shell Relic. No longer provides block stacks. Instead, the buff guards take 50% less damage from basic attacks for as long as they have the health shield. Very, very interesting. So I said that the absorb or the block that this item had sounded broken when this was first introduced, which is years ago at this point. I said that that sounds way too strong because you can really abuse that with multiple shells and just take AA guards out of the fight. For a very long time, most people didn't seem to care very much. And then over time, very, very slowly, years later, eventually, especially with mid laners as well, with mid laners starting to pick it up and stuff, people start to realize, okay, this is actually, very strong against basic attack focused guards and comps. And now we've reached the point where a lot of jungle players especially say, like, it's not even worth picking basic attacking guards that don't at least have some focus on ability damage, because on high levels, they'll just be hard countered by shell, or shell upgraded. And now we're getting this change. So I think that's very interesting. What this means is that it might actually, in some situations, still, like, maybe even reduce someone's damage more when you think about it, because they take 50% less damage. So if a target survives more than 4 basic attacks with the shell up, then they would actually take less damage than they currently do. So if a character has really fast basic attacks but really low damage against the target, then this might actually be a buff for the shell. Because essentially, right now you're taking 2 basic attacks down to 0, and then you would be taking more than 4 basic attacks down to 50%, which would be less damage overall. But that's a very niche case because you'd have to have a massive amount of defense, and the enemy would have to have very low damage for that to come into play in the first place. So overall, this should increase most basic attackers' damage output against shell. And it also means that item effects will proc, and I think they will proc as normal. It only says the damage from basic attacks is reduced. It doesn't say that, for example, Kensai is reduced. So overall, this should lead to a damage increase for even those characters in pretty much any situation. Unless you're choosing to not build Kensais on them, but why would you not do that? So interesting how long it took for the change to come through, but I think it's a good solution. And I want to see how it plays out. I have to get a feel for it in game as well, obviously. It probably won't have any effect if you use 2 of them, by the way. I don't think you get back to 100% reduction, because that would be insane. And then we have the alternate timeline, which for some reason is slipping to the left here. Increase magical power from 45 to 70. This is a very drastic buff. Keep in mind that this ability already had a cooldown reduction recently. Now, the problem with the alternate timeline was that it was not really worth picking up for mid laners, for mages, because it was so defense focused that, yeah, you get the extra survivability from being revived, but then you also get the extra defense, but then you just taken a huge cut to your damage. That's no longer the case now. Now, it's still less damage than the other starters, but it's significantly closer to them, and I think this might actually make this item more appealing. So I'm not quite sure how much more appealing, but I could see this being picked up on certain guards that can utilize it, at least. Not necessarily on everyone, but just guards that benefit from the survivability because they have an option to get out quickly afterwards. Maybe someone like Discordia, for example, who could just jump into her stealth afterwards and disengage very quickly in some situations. Obviously, Persephone comes to mind, but she's getting a change this patch, so we'll talk about her in a bit. But yeah, interesting stuff overall. Then we have Archmage's Gem, added 200 mana. I guess the goal here is to let it synergize with other mage items that care about mana. So it's just like, yeah, Book of Thoth essentially. Bit odd, I guess, but I'll take it, I suppose. It's not the worst thing in the world. And then we have Gem of Focus, increased magical power from 90 to 100. Ironically, Gem of Focus, in my opinion, didn't even need a buff. Like, yeah, the most popular choice is Sense of Time in the SPL, but Gem of Focus was pretty frequently used still on guards that use it well. It was used on Regen, it was used on Janus, it was used on Tiamat, and some more. So, I guess. I don't know. This one surprises me a little bit. So, yeah, well, it's just 10 damage anyway, so 10 power, so it's not that big. Now we get to the really weird stuff. Some really good stuff and some really weird stuff. Bumba Spear. Okay, let's read the text here. Bumba Spear has not only felt weak since the start of Season 8, but had to compete with arguably the most strongest starter in the same tree. Even with the nerfs coming in bonus balance to Bumba's hammer, this item still needs some extra kick to make it feel worthwhile. CR and mana will make this more attractive in general, but we are swapping the gold generation with raw power when slaying jungle monsters, bosses, and structures. Bumba Spear holders can now use that 10 second window to make some strong power plays. At a 10% cooldown reduction. Good. Bit weird because I thought this was like kind of a little bit more to the basic attack focused side initially it seemed, but good. Removed 200 mana. Why do they say remove 200 mana when it says will make this more attractive? That doesn't make sense. I have to actually check if this item had mana before. It did. They actually removed 200 mana. Why do they say that CDR and mana will make this more attractive but remove the mana? I mean, whatever the idea behind that is. I don't know. Passive now provides a 10% power buff for 10 seconds duration after jungle camps, structures, or jungle bosses. No longer provides bonus gold on jungle camp structures and jungle bosses. I'm assuming, it doesn't even state what happens to the passive overall. I'm assuming the old passive is still in there. Like, I'm assuming it still does extra 50 true damage and 50% damage against camps. Maybe? And I'm assuming that you still get the health back and the mana back. Which I don't know if that is still I don't even know if that's fixed at this point. I feel like it wasn't fixed for the longest time, so I don't know if you're actually getting 10% health of a structure at this point. And then the gold is no longer provided. Because otherwise, if they removed the entire old passive, it wouldn't make sense that they wrote this specifically. So what's happening here is that you will be very strong in very weird situations, right? You get power after pushing down like a phoenix, or after taking down a fire giant. But the problem is that those are not the situations where you're looking to fight usually. I don't know what it is. Hyos has this weird obsession with tying upgraded jungle items to jungle objectives, excluding structures here. And I don't think that in late game, most junglers are looking for jungle objectives primarily, or things that do things in the jungle. Like, it's like giving an ADC something to like benefit from clearing minions in late game, which they also have, right? They have some effects that like I think the attack speed increase from the Gilded Arrow upgrade is tied to. No, that one's tied to kill. I think there was one that you can stack with minion effects, and look how often that's picked up. It's picked up so often that I don't even remember which one it is. Look at War Flag. Look how often that is picked up on a high level of play. They're not. People don't want to have effects that depend on objectives in the game falling, because you want to be able to contest the objective as best as possible by pressuring out the enemy. Most players, again, don't want to have things that make them clear objectives as quickly as possible. They don't want to have effects after clearing objectives. They want to fight around the objectives and have the most benefits for that. And that's not what we're not given with this item, even with this new thing. Like this is like a super snowbally item. Like if you get an objective, then you have a lot of power, a lot of health. But even then, they probably have better like combined item stats than other items for most players. But then you get a little bit of power for 10 seconds. So at that point, the enemy better be running. But the enemy better be running if you just picked up a fire giant buff anyways. And if you're so low that they are not running, then this 10% power is probably not going to help you much anyways either. So this is like almost purely for like taking down a tower and then running to the next Phoenix or something. But then it's just 10 seconds. So it's give it a completely different passive. Make it independent of structures and jungle camps and whatnot. Or at least make one of these items. We get to the other one. We get to see out the jungle a bit. Make one of them like independent of that. Now, on the other hand, we have an incredibly cool change. I actually want to pull that up here as well. Because I thought like the biggest thing that held Manikin back as a whole is the lack of good starter upgrades. And I always said that Manikin Hidden Blade having basic attack damage is incredibly stupid when the entire passive is based around something that ability-based junglers will use much, much better than basic attack focused junglers. And that is exactly what is happening. Removed basic attack power. Now provides 60 physical power and 90 magical power. Increased bonus damage on the passive from 15% of the target's current health to 20%. Keep in mind, this is current health and this is physical damage, so it's still reduced by protection. I think this is huge. Right now it has 75 basic attack damage and it now has 60 physical power instead. So you're not really losing that much damage if you're really building it for the basic attack damage. But if you're building it for the basic attack damage, you're probably building Manikin Mace anyways. The item still comes with some physical protection, it still comes with some damage reduction, so it still gives you some survivability. But the passive is just so much better for an ability-based god. And previously it was just better to not build it and just build Heartseeker, Titan's Bane, anything that provides pen and then maybe some power, because it would just give you more reliable, consistent damage. A big problem of this passive is that it only applies if you haven't taken or dealt damage in the last 5 seconds. This applies for everything. I think they could make it so that it doesn't apply for minions at all, because I think that part is super annoying as well. But now it'll actually do stuff. Now it'll actually have an impact. If you get hit by a big Thor ult with Manikin Hidden Blade and Heartseeker, then that's gonna hurt. Thanatos, who was already picked in the SPL, I think will be like a prime user of this now, because now it's actually an effective item for him. And there are definitely like Ratatoska as well. Actually, ironically, a lot of guards that are already picked in the SPL. I think they can all build into this now. I think it'll still have competition. I think there's still gonna be people that, you know, lounge around with Bumba's hammer for a while. But I think if you're looking for a damage-focused, ability-based jungler that is just very much like going in the do as much damage as possible direction, burst an enemy down, then I think Manikin Hidden Blade is going to be a very strong item for that now. The problem is that it has this 5 seconds effect that you basically have to engage first, and sometimes you just lose it in very awkward ways where the enemy is just a tiny bit quicker to attack you or something, and that I think is frustrating. So yeah, I kind of wish they would look into that a little bit more. I kind of wish they would make the passive work a little bit differently. But for the guards that can utilize this effect already, that don't have an issue with engaging quickly or, you know, engaging from the sky where they can't be hit in the first place, I think this is a very, very interesting option now. Like, this is definitely the most exciting change for junglers in this patch. Not so exciting, Sea of the Jungle. Increase attack speed from 15 to 30%. Increase duration of the buff on the passive that allows you to see wards from 10 to 15%. Why? This passive is still so weird. This passive is still something that, if anything, most people would rather have in early game than in late game. And like, yeah, okay, if we look at the stats, it didn't make sense that the upgraded version beforehand only provided 5% more attack speed than the base version, but Protector of the Jungle still provides 25%. I'd still much rather have Protector of the Jungle's passive, Protector of the Jungle's overall stats, and then not have the ability to see some wards than Sea of the Jungle. Like, I don't know. Maybe it'll no. I was gonna say maybe they'll use it in competitive somehow, but they're just gonna get sentries. Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand what the idea here is. It's just weird. Maybe I'll have some value in ranked when your teammates never clear wards. But again, it's tied to jungle camps, and that's what makes it really weird. Because in late game, you're not focused on that. Like, you're not running through the jungle to clear out jungle wards in late game. Warriors X. It's the solo side. Increased health steal on the passive from 25 to 30. Decreased cooldown from 10 seconds to 8 seconds. Makes perfect sense. This item wasn't really picked up. Bluestone is very dominant. Yeah, that's all. But, yeah, warding sigil here as well. Increased physical protection from 10 to 15. Also makes sense, yeah? You know, it was meant to be magical defense originally, but it actually shouldn't be. It should just be both. Like, so it just gets both. But the big deal here, these are the solo items. Do you see something missing here? Like, this is the worst part of in terms of changes in this patch that haven't happened. There are no Bluestone nerfs here. And I really don't think that either of these changes is enough to justify not picking up Bluestone. Warriors X, yes, it's a little bit nicer. But especially with the change to the upgrade, like, most pros don't value it enough. Like, right now we're seeing semi-damage focus build on Sun Wukong that they don't even reach enough. Like, they don't get close enough to cap to even consider Sundering X. Warding Sigil, 5x protections. Okay, but the upgrades are still not what most solos are looking for at the moment. I'm pretty sure what this will lead to is a Bluestone will remain just as dominant because it gives you the early pressure and gives you the clear. It didn't get nerfed. The upgrade is still incredibly strong. Why would you change that to something else? Unless your guard is someone who, like, really doesn't use Bluestone well, of which there are very, very few in the solo department. And I mean, we see those still opting into Death Toll in the SPL and not into these guys. And yeah, I don't see it. Especially as Warriors X is, like, primarily something that works for ability-based characters as well. Just steal. Now Warding Sigil is super defensive. Maybe we'll see some Warding Sigil more, like, maybe we'll see some, like, super tanky SLOTH Warding Sigil, but I don't know. I think it's very, very weird. I don't know what they're thinking with this. But we also get another change. That's the Benevolence. This effect now only gives one nearby ally the bonus golden XP, as opposed to multiple, which you could kind of abuse beforehand, especially chill in the middle with two people and just providing them both with that bonus golden XP due to the split change where you'll always get at least one. Compassion, this item now provides 8 gold per 5, because apparently in late game it was too rough to get to, like, any additional items after building Compassion. Fair enough. I think that's a good change. It's actually pretty significant as well, I would say, like 8 gold per 5. That could be nice. Compassion keeps getting buffed. Sentinel's Boon, increased health and mana restored from the passive from 3 to 4% per assist. This is interesting. Like, this will provide supports with up to 24% of the health and mana back with each wave, which can really enable a successful Phoenix Siege defense. Who was it? I think it was Deathwalker and Fine OK talking about it. And basically, I think Deathwalker was the one saying that Sentinel's Boon is already really, really strong. It's just not getting picked up because Sentinel's Embrace is so good. So I think it's interesting that this is getting a buff. When I think, Sentinel's Embrace is kind of going down in popularity, Compassion is kind of going up, and the rest is not really used anyway. So yeah, I don't know where this will go, but definitely an interesting change. Giant's Coin decreased cost from 2,500 to 2,400 and increased magical power from 80 to 90. Fair enough, nothing like too crazy here. I think that was, it felt a bit unrewarding to pick up. Like, certain guards were picking it up because they just use it better than Obsidian Shard. Like Tiamat, I think, for example, was picking it up. Baba Yaga, something speaking up, but I think that changing it in this direction is justifiable. I mean, it's still a stacking item, so it takes a long time to become fully effective. Then we have Book of SLOTH, increased mana contribution on Book of SLOTH by 1%, and increased MP5 from 15 to 20. Very interesting. I think the problem is that the early MP5, like it's just flat mana on the early ranks, that's a bit of a struggle. But the mana contribution, I think it's meant to be power contribution, right? Mana contribution? Well, I suppose it ends up being the same. But I don't know how much it'll actually translate into in-game, but it's gonna be a bit. Say we have like 2000 mana, it'd still be 20 power. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. So yeah, I want to see how this works out. Might just, I think it just struggled a bit, like once being like the super highest power item, and now with a lot of other items offering more power as well. Not more power than Book of SLOTH necessarily, but more power in general. I think it's justifiable to increase this a little bit. The next one, on the other hand, Spear of the Magus. Spear of the Magus and Spear of Desolation apparently were too similar in their book in terms of like who uses them and how. And now Spear of the Magus will provide 12% lifesteal. I think it's a pretty big buff, 12%. And I mean, I can see the Anubis mains having a party right now. I also think gods like Ragin would very much enjoy this. I think it's going to be even interesting for certain like non-traditional characters picking up. Like I've seen it on like Cthulhu and stuff. So maybe, with the big AoEs that he has and everything, get a bit of lifesteal through that as well. Yeah, I could see this being very interesting. I could see this making this a very prominent choice on certain characters. I suppose in a way for Hyris is also a push for like a Vampire Shroud type of build in the first place. Like pushing characters that benefit from lifesteal, meaning that the Vampire Shroud characters can get more into the meta. And that could be interesting. Could be maybe seen a transition through that in the SPL. We'll find out. Just combine all that stuff and then the Typhon's Fang on top of that. But yeah, I like it. I think it's an interesting buff, even though I think Spear of the Magus is not even that bad. Mail of Renewal. Decrease the health of the item from 300 to 250, but decrease the time the heal takes to complete from 20 to 10 seconds. So this is for teams or like for allies, which beforehand effectively felt more like, providing them with a little of HP 5 effectively. And now this will actually provide them with a more significant heal because it takes half as long. So I think this is going to make it more interesting. I think I like this change. Like obviously it gets a bit of a nerf in return as well. But I do think that as a team-oriented item, this makes it a fair bit better, even though for the individual player, it'll actually be a nerf. I know that in the SPL, it was picked up as a team-oriented item, so maybe you'll see more of it there. So Nafal has its cost decreased from 2,500 to 2,350. That item was most certainly overpriced for what it offers, so this is very reasonable. I think I did a comparison on this actually with like only hunters and stuff. Yeah, not much more to say. I don't think it'll be picked up much. Whatever. The big deal of this patch is the Persephone rework. I don't know why they put it so low at the bottom. This one, a lot to talk about. It's a lot to unpack. So initially, when I read the changes, I thought this would dull her down a lot. Now, I will say I'm not so sure anymore, because I have watched the part of the patch notes where they showed the abilities, and there are actually a lot of interesting mechanics to them now. I actually have her old abilities on my second screen here, because I wanted to have a bit of a comparison, just to make sure that I get things right, because I don't know everything from the top of my head. So let's go through this. So, Pomegranate Seeds is reworked. When Persephone dies, she travels to the plane of death, where she can place 6 harvest seeds that'll sprout when she respawns. She can place 6 immediately, basically. Like, she places them one by one, obviously, but you can, I think you just basic attack, and then every time you do that, you place someone. There's no cooldown or anything. Each time one of her harvest plants withers, she gains a pomegranate seed. So you can still get seeds from that. Extra pomegranate seeds are sold at the fountain for 3 gold a seed. Persephone can hold up to 100 seeds. Major changes. Persephone no longer revives in a state where she can deal damage or apply CC. She instead enters this state to plan for her next life. What's interesting here is that she cannot see while she's in this state. She cannot see enemies or allies or anything. She's like basically on an empty map. But if you're in comms, then your team could still tell you where the enemies are. So they say that like this is for like strategical reasons and whatnot, but like on competitive at least, or if you're using voice and ranked, you would still know where the enemies are, and you can still place your plans there strategically. So that's interesting. And your death timer starts running the moment you die still, even while this is active, so you can take your time with this, which is very nice. I said like this would be like the ideal outcome essentially, and it is the ideal outcome for this ability in terms of how it functions now. Obviously still a heavy nerf to the ability at the same time. Bone Rush. It's a major adjustment because the ability essentially is now a normal line projectile. It's just a skeleton running forward. Range 65 units. Previously it was 55 units, but then, 35 units and then I think an additional 55. So the range, that doesn't add up. No, actually it says it has a max range of 85, but whatever. So either way, the range is either reduced by 20 or by 25. So a significant range decrease, but a direct line ability. There's a single warrior that charges forward, damaging minions and stopping on guards. Enemy guards hit are slowed for 2.5 seconds. And when the ability stops, a skull falls that becomes a harvest skull and can be sent out in the normal way. This ability now deals 100 damage to 300 damage, which is the same as before. Previously it had 80% scaling, now it has 90% scaling. The slow is actually new. I didn't realize this. So this sets up her 2 now. That's interesting. I didn't realize that with slow attached. That wasn't mentioned before. Okay. 20% to 30% slow. 60 to 80 mana costs. That is the same as before. And a cooldown going down from 12 to 10 seconds. So this is a shorter cooldown now before. It was 12 seconds flat, and now it decreases. And she can also now re-aim the ability right until the moment it fires, so it's not locked in place, but you aim it like a normal line projectile. So I think this is interesting, right? It has a slow, it has a shorter cooldown, it has pretty much the same damage, shorter range, but you can re-aim it. You will not poke enemies as much when they sit under tower, but it will be easier to hit them when they get into lane. Though it does seem that the projectile is relatively slow, because if you remember the first part of the projectile was slower, and then the second part after the bones shattered was like quicker. They had to actually slow it down a bit because it was instant initially. And now I think it is a little slower overall. So it's going to be a bit different. But then again, if you hit an enemy, you slow them. So I think that offsets that. So yeah, interesting changes to this ability. Definitely more simplified version, and obviously making it a bit easier because it sets up other abilities. Harvest. A circle with a 50 unit range, or a 12.5 unit radius. This is a very small circle. This is kind of, I don't know if it's the same size as Kronos 1 or if it's a little bit bigger than that, but it is definitely not exactly a big AoE. So you have to land this relatively precisely, which makes sense in the context of the 1 now providing slow. That's why you want to combo the 1 into the 2 a lot of the time. Persephone summons an explosion at the target location that places 3 harvest skulls. The harvest skulls are placed on the outside of the explosion and are far enough away from each other that you cannot proc multiple of them at once with a basic attack, from what I can tell so far, from what it looks like. She can activate these harvest plants with her basic attacks. When the skulls are activated, she restores health for herself, as before. After 4 seconds, the skulls turn into harvest flowers. When activated, these flowers charge forward into the direction hit, biting any target that gets close. So it goes in the same direction as the damaging projectile. Enemies recently bitten take reduced damage from other bites, taking up to 3 times. You can have up to 5 on rank 1 and 2, 6 on rank 3 and 4, and 7 on rank 5 harvest plants out at any time. So, it's a lot to unpack here. The explosion is 90 to 290 damage plus 80% of your magical power. That is actually a fair bit more than the explosion of the previous plant, where a single explosion was 60 to 220 plus 65% of your magical power. Previously, the damage came from the fact that you can, drop multiple plants and detonate them if you get good placements with them. The heal is 22 to 50 plus 10% of your magical power, which is the same as before, which is interesting because now you can often place, now you always place 3 at once. The bite is 40 damage to 200 damage, which used to be 70 to 250. But keep in mind that now you get the explosion and the bite. Like previously you had to choose between them and you wouldn't get both damage instances. But now you have 3 bite chances after each explosion. So overall, I think there's actually a higher damaging chance in many situations. The reduced damage is 40, 64, and then 78 from all the bites, whatever. That is kind of, I think, similar-ish to what it was before. I actually don't know what the reduction was before. But yeah, anyways. Again, the change now happens after 4 seconds, not after 2.5 seconds. So it takes a little bit longer for the plants to spawn. The cooldown is 14 seconds. Now, the cooldown here is technically obviously longer than placing down an individual seed when you can have them stored. But the individual seed cooldown on the old ability, on Old Harvest, was 8 seconds, which means the cooldown for 3 seeds was 24 seconds. Now the cooldown for 3 seeds is 14 seconds. Just saying. They already said on the patch notes that this is going to lead more seeds being on the ground in late game. And I think that's the case. I think it's actually going to be the case even in early game, excluding even before the match you can place down some of them. They will still provide extra gold as well, which means that she will be able to get quite a lot of extra gold overall if you use this ability very frequently. On the other hand, obviously the struggle is that it costs mana and you don't have infinite mana. So it might be beneficial to go into mana focused builds because the mana cost is almost the same or like more initially than on the old patch. So right now a single seed on level 1 costs 18 mana and harvest costs 60 mana for 3 seeds. So it costs a little bit more. Whereas at max rank, Old Harvest would cost 30 mana per seed, whereas now it will cost 80 mana for 3 seeds, so it's a little bit cheaper in that regard. But again, if you work around this with a mana-focused build to some degree, Sands especially should work in that regard, then you can kind of abuse that. And I think then you can just increase your farm quite significantly with this. And I think that's an interesting one. So major changes for this ability as a whole. This ability now deals AoE damage upon cast. It places multiple plants at once. The plants themselves now have 2 state scouts and flowers. Persephone can directly aim the charge direction of the flowers, improving how she can utilize these flowers, and enemies can see a clear AoE indicator, giving them something to avoid. Okay, so we have to talk about these plants because they're actually very different, and I think I like them better. Yeah, previously they would chase down an enemy and then bite in front of him, and that's it. And you can just run through that and juke that very easily. Now, the plants can go through walls. And that is something that you can abuse, I think, in mid lane. For example, if the enemies are on the harpies, on the big harpies on the side, and you just send some harvest or some flowers through the wall and see if one of them steals one of them. They have this circle radius around them, and in this radius, it seems like they hit instantly. So it doesn't even seem to be like intervals or something. Basically, if anyone gets in the radius, they take damage from the plants. So yeah, if someone's too close to you and the plants spawn, then they take that damage. And you can use it very well to like cover a large area because again, they go in the direction that you're basic attacking, and you can send out 3 very quickly if you have your 2 placed down beforehand, and then you can just kind of send them like a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, straight to the center, and it's going to be very hard for the enemy to duke that. And even if they're juking that, then you can probably confirm your 1 on them and then confirm the next 2 or something. I think they could also be used for clearing through this. This is also going to be interesting. I don't know how exactly that'll work best. Like if it might be better to just place the harvest close to you and then send that through the wave instead of using the harvest on the wave. But I doubt it, but could be interesting. But yeah, I think there's a lot of new outplay potential with this that wasn't there before, because I think beforehand, on a higher level of play, the plans were just regarded as a stupid afterthought because they were really just not worth worrying about. And now that will have like a relevant, significant impact. So I don't actually think, even though I initially had that impression, that it's necessarily dumps or down that much. Because it's just different, you know. Obviously, yeah, you have that straightforward explosion now, but you have a different way of using the plants. And in that regard, the third ability comes into play as well. Flourish the leap with a 20 unit radius. Why did they put the description here? I think, well, yeah, okay. Because plants inside of it now immediately become harvest flowers instead of becoming the tier 2 bumps. And charge in the direction that Persephone is facing. And this, again, is interesting, because this means you can send them forward while you're jumping backward, or you can send them forward while you're jumping forward. And I think this can be a very, very scary escape. Escape too, but primarily engage. When you see an enemy team that you really want to just go in on, and that is maybe locked down so you won't need your escape, you have your 2 drop down, you just push those 3 flowers right into the enemy, and then, you know, use whatever ability you want to use afterwards, or use it in combination with your ultimate. Just lock them down and then send the flourish into them, send those 3 flowers into them, and they will run straight at the target with very little means for the enemy to avoid that, even if they somehow manage to get out of the ultimate. So yeah, I think that's interesting as well. The ability itself, the explosion of the escape itself, does 65 to 225 damage, plus 65% of your magical power scaling. There's a range of 45. Wait, oh, why does it say radius 20? I thought that's, well, whatever. Cost of 70 and a cooldown of 15 down to 13 seconds. That cooldown is actually a little bit longer than it used to be. It used to be 15 down to 11. On the other hand, it deals damage now, or like guaranteed damage. Yeah, it no longer generates a pre-germinated seed because the sprout seed is gone, and that deals damage to offset the place explode combo. So I don't know. I think, yeah, obviously this is not like insane damage, but this is still the same damage as putting down a seed immediately. Like putting down a single 2 would have been 60 damage to 220 damage beforehand with 65% scaling, and now it's 65 to 225. So she gets 5 extra basic damage when using this, compared to just putting down a single plant and then leaping. Don't catch me complaining. Like, I'm honestly thinking that overall, with all these damage changes and the slow and the extra plants that you get out of this, I think she'll actually do more damage in many situations. That's going to be interesting. Obviously, she can not cycle through her abilities quite as quickly because the 3 has a slight cooldown increase, but it's not by that much that I'd be like, okay, this is going to destroy her. The ultimate gets a nerfs in return as well, but I think that's, yeah, I think even Persephone players, Persephone mains, will not disagree with the fact that the ultimate was still incredibly strong. So what changes here is that enemies that have this vine on them will no longer be locked in how far they can go away from the circle of the plant. As long as they don't leave the circle, they're just blocked from leaving the circle. And they are slowed when running away from the center. Like when pulling their vine longer, they're slowed, and they can run towards their ally in the vine cage, or to the vine cage itself, at normal speed. The vines are still destroyed after 5 basic attacks, 3 if trapped at a wall. And yeah, the damage is 175 to 455, which is still the same as before, still the same as scaling as well, with 75% of your magical power. The vine damage stays the same as 65 to 165 and 30% scaling. The attack speed reduction stays the same at 15%. And the slow is when you walk away from it now. is 15 to 25%. Keep in mind that she also has a slow on her 1, so she can slow enemies quite significantly. And obviously slowing enemies also sets up other stuff, so you got to be careful with that. Duration is 5 seconds, that's unchanged. So this ability no longer constricts movement the closer you get to the jumping vines, again. And you can still move up to 55 units away at all times, but are blocked from going further. So I honestly think after reading the changes and how they announced it yesterday, I think they left out a lot of important stuff. I think they left out changes to the 1, especially when it comes to the slow and stuff, the cooldown change, slight damage change. They left out that the 2 will actually be able to send out these plants and send them through walls. They didn't mention the part that where the plants can go through walls and all that type of stuff. So I think overall, I'm not mad. I think initially I was very confused by these changes, but now I'm like, no, yeah, this could work. Like it's this, it's gonna take a while to get used to, but I actually don't think this is that bad. I'm sure there will be like some high-level Persephone players that will still be very frustrated with this because they, like, I want my super high skill ceiling guard and I want them the way they are now. But I think that utilizing the sprouts or the plants properly, the running plants properly, which kind of in a way work like Apuash's corpses now, I guess, only that they go through walls. I think utilizing that properly and min-maxing that will be the new skill ceiling for her. And I think that could be interesting. I have to wait and see, but I think it could be interesting. Like I'm not going to go out here and say this is going to be a good rework based on this. I'm still like, I don't know. But I can see more of the appeal now with certain effects here, certain benefits that you can have. I think actually, come to think of it, the cap of harvest plants is also increased, right? How many could you have before? Oh no, it's not. It's decreased. Never mind. It was 6, 6, 8, 8, 10. So that is reduced. But then I suppose you get them much quicker as well. So, you're just cycling through them quicker. Yeah, interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. I'm very curious to see how this goes. But there's some more changes. Gilgamesh got nerfs in the last patch already, like I said, in the bonus balance, but he's getting some more nerfs more. More nerfs here. They thought that he was still performing too well. Sunford Scimitar gets burst damage decreased from 65 to 305 to 65 to 185. So doesn't affect the initial rank, only the higher ranks. Not really a big deal in my opinion, because in higher ranks, it's when you're going to focus more on the basic attacks afterwards anyways. It's more of a reset. I guess it's nice because it's like an AoE, so it takes a little bit of that damage away. And then Dropkick adjusted stun duration from 1.1 to 1.5 seconds to 1.2 seconds at all ranks. That one is a bit odd to me because I really like the fact that there was value in leveling either the 1 or the 2 based on, what type of CC do I want more and all that. And I also find that if you kick an enemy into a wall, 1.2 seconds can be very short if you're not like really close to them already, where they often just walk away afterwards because the stun is so short. So I don't quite know about this one. I think it's not going to ruin him or anything. I just don't know if it's the type of nerf that I would have liked to see for him. I think overall with the other nerfs that he's getting, he's going to be in a more balanced state, I'm sure. It's going to be interesting to see the stats then, see how it performs after that. But again, I also want to see his ranked stats to really know where he's at. They have kind of like blanket nerfed his kit now. Like I said in my Gilgamesh, my more recent Gilgamesh balance video, he kind of has this situation where he's dealing a lot of AoE damage, he's dealing a lot of basic attack damage, he's got a lot of CC, and he's got team buffs. And aside of the team buffs, they've basically nerfed every single aspect a little bit. And I feel like in that regard, maybe they're also still kind of trying to find what is the most problematic part and just, we just nerf him everywhere and then see what happens. The problem is that if they nerf him everywhere, it might not be as clear afterwards which one of the nerfs was actually the more significant one. But we'll have to find out. I think overall it's still good nerfs. Tiamat, Basilisks decrease the lifetime of the deployable from 21 seconds to 11 seconds, results in only 4 Basilisks spawning instead of a total of 6. I think this was very necessary. Not surprising that it's coming. And yeah, the split push is stupid annoying. It might actually still be. It might actually still be to some degree if you time it right with a minion wave, and the minion wave soaks up the damage and the Basilisk attack the tower. But at least it's not as stupid as before. So, still stupid in a way, but not as stupid as before, and I'm happy with that. I still don't even see why she's supposed to split push in the first place. I think she has enough other tools, but I would still be completely fine if the Basilisk couldn't attack towers at all. But hey, whatever. It's definitely the right type of nerf that she needed. Bakasura. Eat minion. Decreased mana cost from 55 to 40, and this ability now restores 60 to 80 flat mana upon successfully eating a minion. This is very interesting because now he gets mana back for using this ability. And yeah, the reasoning being here that he struggles with mana in early game. So yeah, I like to see that. That's a cool one. And Butcher Blades has the cooldown decreased from 14 seconds to 12 seconds. Very interesting. Very spicy in my opinion. Bakasura has been doing terrible in this season, like statistically completely off the grid. And I think the problem for him will remain that right now the items that got buffed, the items that got changed will not really benefit him. Like the Protector of the Jungle is the only item that he really wants to use. Maybe it's gonna be some weird Spear of the Jungle. Is it Spear? No, what? Spear? Bumba Spear. Build. But I don't know. The Shell nerf, I think, actually is the bigger buff to him. And the Shell nerf also means that his true damage will go through Shell. Will not be reduced, I think. Will go through with the basic attacks. So that should be a more significant buff overall. But I think these are still good buffs for him. Bellona. Bellona is a little bit left behind. So she's getting a buff to the spin damage of Bludgeon from 30 to 150 to 45 to 165. The combined damage of this ability is insane, but the spin damage part is not the amplified one, it's the one that amplifies the one after. So it's not like it massively increases the overall damage of that ability. It's just a 15 damage increase, which I think is fair. And then Eagle's Rally increased stun from 1 second to 1.25 seconds at all ranks. That stun was incredibly short for an ultimate, so I think that is fine as well. I don't really know if this is enough to really bring her back, but let's see if we see some shift in solo anyways. I think she doesn't really use blue stun well enough to really do much, but who knows. Chiron, giddy up. Chiron is now knock up immune while galloping. Okay, I'm not much to say. Surprising change, like kind of, he's just not doing that well, but not the change I expected. But actually, he was doing well for a while. It's just not played much. But yeah, I suppose. So. Oh yeah, no, they actually say it. Yeah, he had a few buffs and is starting to perform quite well. So, although player perception isn't sold on this yet, so this is a perception buff. I can say, like, I actually remember that he was actually doing pretty decently. But then I think the bigger problem is like trying to see if he's mid or ADC. Daji, 1000 cuts, increased base damage from 25 to 105 to 30 to 110. That's significant, especially because in early game, should buff this a little bit. Also, the shell nerf will buffer a little bit. And then Tricks the Spirit, I guess the base damage increased from 70 to 230 to 80 to 240. I don't really know. I don't really know with Daji because I don't know if like base damage increases are really what will improve her situation. I don't know if she maybe can work with Manikin Hidden Blade. Like, I'm wondering what happens if you ult and chain an enemy and then just stay in the chain state for as long as possible, assuming they don't have beats. If you could like proc Manikin Hidden Blade from up there, because I think you can stay up there for like 8-ish seconds. So if that's possible, that could be interesting. Like you could maybe like have an aggressive Daji build with Manikin Hidden Blade. I'm not sure. Trying to see. Oh yeah, the power level lasts 9 seconds. So if you just ult, shoot the shots, then don't do anything, and then just wait until it comes down, then you might be able to proc it again after, if the enemy doesn't have CC immunity or beats. Could be something. It could be a funny strat. Well, we'll see. Fafnir. Quite a few buffs. Because strength decreased the cooldown from 15 seconds to 15 down to 13 seconds, scaling with 0.5 seconds per rank. And this cooldown is also applied to Dragonfall. That is good. I mean, wait, why is that the right logo for Curse Strength? I'm so confused. I feel like I haven't seen that in ages. No, it's not. I'm confused. Yeah, this is very misleading. This is the logo for Underhanded Tactics, and I was like, is that even the cooldown of Underhanded Tactics? Because it's not. Okay, so this is the wrong logo. It's his Curse Strength. This is his 1. And his 1 is the stun. It's the hammer. That's decreased from 15 to 13 seconds. Okay, yeah, I got it right in my head, but this logo confused me. So this, I think, is quite impactful because that ability is so significant to his kit. Like if you land this, you win. If you miss this, you lose. That's how it goes. So being able to use that more often is very, very strong. And along with that, Underhanded Tactics, which also has the wrong logo, which is not Curse. But what happened there? Which is ability 03 and not ability 02. Decreased cooldown from 18 to 15 seconds, meaning the disarm and the engage/escape will be up more often as well, which has nothing to do with this 2. Wow, that was messy. Okay, we got it though. So both of his CCs have decreased cooldowns, 3 seconds down in one case. And yeah, in both forms as well. And I think that's huge. I think those are huge buffs overall. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. But we have to say, on the other hand, especially his 3 cooldown was very long beforehand. Oh, don't confuse me with these logos again. Jeez. Hera, Polymorph, increased power scaling from 75 to 80%. Okay, whatever. Divine Shroud, increased health from 50 to 250 to 70 to 230. Increased health shield from 15 to 17 times Hera's level though. So previously the shield went from 65 to 550, and now it goes from 87 to 570. So effectively leveling the shield gives you a little bit less, but you get a little bit more from leveling up. I don't know. Do I think that's good? I'm not sure. I think Hera's shield shouldn't be too strong, because I think Hera's shield can be very frustrating. At the same time, the late game difference here isn't that significant. It's more the early game difference that is relevant. I don't know how to feel about that. Because the fact that she gets more value out of her shield without leveling it means there's less incentive to even level it, and she will probably just up in the 1 and 2 first. And then she gets more benefit from doing like that type of leveling style. Which, yeah, I don't know. I'm very hesitant with that shield, because there was a time when Hera with her shield was just incredibly unbearable to deal with and basically ungankable, and I'd prefer not to return there. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I have to like see that in game to make better judgment of it. Kukulkan, Slipstream, decreased cooldown from 15 seconds in all ranks to 15 down to 13 seconds. Very interesting. They say, we saw a few matches on the SPL, but this was likely due to personal preference or players playing from remote locations with higher ping. I wish they would have just asked the players about that. instead of just making that assumption before they make a balance change, like with that thinking in mind. But I do think that this is a very interesting buff, because Kukulkan's 2 is like such a strong mobility ability. Obviously, it's not an instant escape, but it's such a strong mobility ability, especially for rotations as well. Typically, obviously, you won't level it early, so it won't make a massive difference in that regard for rotations. But I'm very curious to see how this plays out. 2 seconds down on cooldowns. Could be interesting. Kukulkan also gets a little bit of a buff if you're building Spear on him. You get a little bit of lifesteal as well and stuff. So yeah, interesting stuff. Medusa. Lacerate. Increased healing debuff from 3 to 4 seconds. Decreased cooldown from 15 seconds to 15, scaling down to 13 seconds. That one is interesting. The first part, yeah, okay, it's 1 second, whatever. How often are you going to notice that? But the cooldown change here, like, there may be some situations where this allows you to go in aggressively and have your 3 back up to get out, especially if you build a little bit of cooldown reduction. So, maybe it's interesting. I think overall it's still not exactly her meta at the moment, so I feel like there's also such other more potent ability-based hunters. Like when would you want to pick her over Anhero? When would you want to pick her over Danzaburo for that matter? Like, those characters seem to have a lot more selling points for them compared to her. But yeah, I still like that she's getting buffs of some sort at least. And we have Mulan getting buffs. Again, the first ones didn't do that much. I thought they would actually have a bit of an impact initially when I read the patch notes, but then I tried her in game and I was like, nah, this doesn't do anything. And then, yeah. Some people said, well, no, those buffs are actually still big. And I was like, I'm not sure. And then we didn't really see any more Mulan than before because no one even wanted to play her because it didn't really make a difference. So now she's getting a buff to Cross Strike, increasing the buff duration from 4 to 6 seconds on the skilled attack speed buff effect. So the one that you get once the ability is leveled up. Lasts a little bit longer. And Grapple, increase the buff duration from 4 to 6 seconds on the skilled protections buff effect. And increase the stun duration from 0.8 seconds to 1 second at all ranks. I'll be honest, I'm still not sure if these changes are actually going to make a big difference. It's nice to have those buffs for a little bit longer, but this is something that you typically don't drastically notice in a fight. And 0.2 seconds on a stun is nice, but it's not going to feel like super heavy, especially since I think you spend some of that stun time pulling the enemy in anyways. So, I don't know. I feel like I can see why they're careful with the buffs, especially with the current solo meta. There could be some interesting things happening anyways, like maybe Bluestone Mulan could be a thing, but I don't know. I don't think these buffs will significantly change anything, to be honest. And that's it. That's all the changes for this patch. That was very, very long. A lot to talk about here. Very, very significant changes. Like I said, it almost felt like a mid-season patch, basically. And yeah, with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Not going to do the whole ultra thing right now because I can't cut it off the same way. But I hope to see you for the next one soon. I'm going to do a patch show recap, summary, supercut, whatever you want to call it tonight. So if you want to see that, feel free to hit the sub button with a bell so you get notified. See you for the next one soon. ZiSotto out.